People often say money makes the world go round, but money is merely the lubricant. Energy production is what spins the colonized world on its axis. Our current production methods rely on massively scaled extraction: drilling, blasting, digging, dumping, and transporting. Then we transform these natural resources into energy through combustion, explosion, fire, a chemical process that feeds our infrastructure but depletes our Earth. Renewables played a small part in global production, only about 28% in 2018, and their current scalability remains unlikely long term, despite climate goals and political promises. In 2018, global demand reached approximately 620 exajoules, with projections climbing to over 100,000 plus exajoules by 2015. To put that into perspective, Seattle consumes about 1 exajoule of energy every 6 months. Demand projections are elusive, constantly reshaped by the exponential growth of server farms, the electric infrastructure, and quantum computing, to name a few. Even the shift to renewables requires more extraction. To build batteries and solar panels, wind turbines, and hydroelectric systems, we are, in essence, trying to solve an overwhelming problem with the same thinking that created it. You cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it, Albert Einstein. Recent innovations in tokamaks, stellarators, and magnetic fusion confinement show promise for humanity's technological evolution. After 50 years of effort, we have now made machines capable of containing hydrogen fusion reactions, many suns burning at 100 million degrees Celsius for up to 90 seconds. That's about as long as they can get the reaction to go before the tokamaks would explode. Only within the past year have we been able to produce a slightly more energetic reaction than it consumes to initiate the reaction itself. Yet even this progress stems from a paradigm of dominion and reduction. We seek mastery over the stars by creating black hole-like gravitational forces to contain them, a cosmic tug of war. The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than all the previous centuries of its existence. Nikola Tesla. The paradigms we hold shape what we create. How we view the universe mirrors how we view ourselves. If we see the universe as a mystery to tame and master, we perpetuate a consumptive, cancerous way of being. Rather than observing complexity as the natural ebb and flow of the aether, we impose order, control, and calculation, struggling to remain in being and instead seeking meaning only through doing. But what if the foundational assumptions we build our realities upon are flawed? As Einstein and others explored the quantized world beneath the atom, they uncovered startling truths about the voids between particles. Space appeared to contain more potential energy than all the matter in the universe combined. In 1911, Max Planck calculated this energetic field and named it the zero-point field, a vast dimension of energy resting in perfect equilibrium, which, when disturbed, could coalesce into coherent frequencies of matter. All things spiral into being and back out again. J.D. Tungsten. To make this field usable in calculations, physicists quantified it using a 1 centimeter cube of spacetime. To visualize it, hold your fingers an inch apart and imagine pinching a cube of spacetime between them, which, in fact, you are actually doing. Within the cube is more energy than all the matter of the universe condensed into the same cubic space between your fingers. That cube was calculated to contain energy equaling 10 to the 93rd, or a 10 followed by 93 zeros. a number far too vast for manageable modeling. To cope, physics enacted the Great Renormalization, creating a universal constant to treat space as void rather than a sea of potential energy. For a century, quantum physicists have been modeled on an empty universe, labeling the unexplainable as dark matter or dark energy. Some physicists, like David Bohm, challenged this renormalized constant. Bohm nearly lost tenure for insisting the foundational data was wrong. His concern proved prophetic, for in 2010, a German team of physicists, led by Randolph Pohl, physically measured the proton radius for the very first time at the heart of a hydrogen atom and found that prior models, based on the renormalized constant, were off by a factor of 4 orders of magnitude. Imagine your bank account with $10,000 in it, and now take away 4 zeros. What do you have left? Do you think that makes a significant difference? It does. It does to your bank account and to our models of the quantum realm. Thus, quantum theory, though filled with elegant equations, has never produced a real-world breakthrough because it is built on flawed assumptions as a starting point. Likewise, many of the authors we've read around human potential, identity, and systems change operate from flawed origins. Our current paradigm is rooted in unbounded growth, consumption, reductionism, division, hierarchy, and materialism. It is like trying to map the night sky while wearing a blindfold. As long as we are embedded in our Cartesian worldview, we cannot model our way out of it. We must first transform ourselves. That means building our systems literacy and living the practices that embody the complexity we find in natural systems all around us. Much of the planetary consciousness literature touches the strings of a vast instrument but doesn't know how to play it. It recognizes the need for change, but often lacks the means. The focus on individual transformation must expand to reflect multidimensional systemic dynamics and holofractal complexity. Because systems operate within dimensional spacetime, and each of us is a coordinate within that system of spacetime, we have the means to engage with it once we focus on our lens through scale, boundaries, and intention. As a systems designer, I practice this scale, boundaries, and intention by perceiving myself as a three-dimensional coordinate within spacetime, shaped by 3 intersecting axes. The y-axis, which is vertical, coming from the top down, is the alignment with the divine, with presence within me, and with being or place. The x-axis, horizontal, is my relationship to time, past, the present moment that I exist in, and the future. The z-axis, as above, so below, is the holofractal field, scaling from the universal down through my body and into the quantum. This axis echoes ancient Sanskrit concepts of Jivas, Bindu, and Maya. Where all 3 of these axes meet is the eternal present moment, the place where my body, mind, and soul reside. From this boundary level, I can scale in or out to understand my influence on systems. I can observe through awareness, meditation, and reflection the boundary levels that are within me and beyond me, while still rooted in my viable scale of responsibility, accountability, and action. I call this systemic spheres of perspective. By contrast, narrative identity operates on only one axis, our perception of time. A narrative identity is a person's internalized and evolving story of how he or she has become the person he or she is becoming. Quote, McAdams and McLean, 2013. It aims to reconstruct the autobiographical past and imagine the future in such a way as to provide a person's life with some degree of unity, purpose, and meaning. McAdams, 2019. Rocher builds on this through Freud's work, saying Freud's clinical work with individuals whose cure involves making narrative sense of the fragments of memory and story that disorder their sense of identity. And again, he notes, for example, in the rule of metaphor, that the self mastering ego must exchange itself for the figure of a self that emerges from a reading of the text. Crowley, page 3. But this model often avoids the reckoning with the shadow self, choosing complacency over confrontation, rewriting story to foster emotional security and egoic fortitude rather than personal growth. For instance, McAdams describes Angela Robinson's narrative, a 55-year-old African American woman who has been a teacher, an actress, a singer, a playwright, and a cocktail waitress. End quote. Angela's, quote, fast-paced, emotionally intense life story wherein the protagonist repeatedly triumphs over adversity is full of trauma, end quote, is full of trauma, harm, and little personal accountability, except to state, quote, she wishes that she had been a better mother to her son, but she feels that if she had devoted herself to him, she would never have found the opportunities she ultimately found in the wider world, end quote. This deserves deeper self-inquiry, not just narrative redemption. Similarly, climate change literature often relies on a singular dimensional thinking, rooted in the same neoliberalism paradigm it aims to critique. Quote, overall, social imaginaries formed from these stories and ideas are contested and currently lack the plausible and tangible ability to change neoliberal capitalism. Reedy and Wardick, 2007. That's because they're rooted in neoliberal capitalism. Every participant in that study is immersed in a neoliberal capitalist system, regardless of how they choose to identify politically. Quote, transformative social imaginaries could grow from these ideas if change agents nurture shared visions of desirable futures, explore real practices that support awakening, and create tangible stories to guide collective action by all of us. End quote. Reedy, Waddock, 2007. Unfortunately, one cannot imagine new realities while consciously rooted in the existing one. If all our efforts are to renormalize the narrative and change how we see ourselves and the worlds we create, we will only end up changing the narrative itself. We will avoid systemic transformation in favor of temporary technical fixes that transpose the symbols, but not their Cartesian meaning. We are beginning from an origination point of flawed data about who we are and how we can affect systemic change. Jessup offers a more systemic solution, observing that complex systems share nonlinear, scale dependence, feedback, and recursivism. In this sense, quote, structural constraints always operate selectively. They are not absolute and unconditional, but always temporally, spatially, agent, and strategically specific. Conversely, to the extent that agents are reflexive, capable of reformulating within limits their own identities and interests, and able to engage in strategic calculations about their current situations, they may be able to alter these selectivities. End quote. Jessup, page 6, 2012. He emphasizes that system relevant and life world imaginaries provide the basis for identities and interest. Agents normally have multiple identities, privileging some over others in different contexts. End quote. Jessup, 2012, page 7. Jessup urges us to analyze the meaning making systems through three key steps. One, recognize semiosis, signs and symbols, as a meaning pulls that reduce complexity. Two, identify social imaginaries as semiotic clusters, ever evolving and never closed. And three, analyze how these imaginaries support systems of domination and exploration. Jessup, 2012, pages 8 and 9. These steps of systemic analysis are not just external, but invitations for internal analysis. Identity, agent, or ego is a form of internalized semiosis or meaning making that requires our interrogation and recognition. Jessup provides three steps for analyzing both external systems and the internal explorations, oppressions, and dominations that serve each agent's ideal or material interest. Jessup's 2012, page 8. We know this because we are working from the understanding that all systems are multidimensional and holofractal. We understand that the information within the external metasystem mirrors the internalized system coordinates of a perspective, of a perception that each human being inhabits, i.e., their consciousness. Which brings us back to energy. In 2010, 10 months before Poole's paper on the proton size, Nassim Haramein published The Schwarzschild Proton, using the original 1914 zero-point field value to calculate the proton's mass. His estimate was within 0.000004% of Poole's observed results. By reintroducing the energy of the vacuum back into the equation, his calculations aligned with nature. He proposed that the proton itself behaves like black holes, and because the universe is holofractal, this model scales from the Planck spherical unit to the quark to the atom, star, galaxy, universe. All of these fit Karl Schwarzschild's original equation for what makes a black hole. His theories suggest that zero-point energy, vast, clean, and everywhere, can be harnessed to power humanity indefinitely. He has even taken it a step further to produce a product that disrupts the Planck spherical units within the zero-point field and produces measurable photons of light from the vacuum of space. When our foundations are in alignment, we can create systemic models that will transform the world. Ere many generations pass, our machinery will be driven by the power obtained at any point in the universe. Throughout space, there is energy. Then, it is a mere question of time when humans will succeed in attaching their machinery to the very wheelwork of nature.